Welcome to NCBA's Cattlemen's Call podcast with host Lane Nordland.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Cattlemen's Call podcast. Lane Nordland joining you here today. Just a few episodes ago, we highlighted three of the regional winners of the 2025 class of the Environmental Stewardship Award program. We're going to be joined by three other regional winners here today from regions 1, 3, and 7. So as, of course, I've mentioned before, I really enjoy these ESAP conversations because it really highlights the diversity and backgrounds of producers, the different landscapes that they raise cattle, and the natural resources that they manage along the way here as well. But without further ado and more of my rambling, I would just like to introduce them here today. But first, I will get in trouble. We just need to give a big shout out to our friends at NRCS, Corteva AgriScience, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for their continued support of the ESAP program, and the families that participate and are recognized through it each and every year. Well, now I'll get to introducing our guests here today. First, we have Mike Wilson from Whispering Hills Farm in Lawrence, Kentucky, Jack Smith of Smith Family Farms in Bankston, Iowa, and Logan, I'm going to slaughter your last name there. Logan, how do you say your last name? Pribino. I should have just went with it because that's exactly what I was going to say.
That's surprising.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Good. Pribino of Wineglass Ranch there in Imperial, Nebraska. Again, the 2025 Environmental Stewardship Award Program regional winners from regions 1, 3, and 7. And we're having this conversation here in San Diego. Pretty nice outside. Mm-hmm. I understand why people retire here, I guess. Right. I don't think we know what retirement is in the ag business, but you've had a lot thrown at you in the last few days, media trainings, getting to meet other regional winners, and recognition here during the lunchtime. But Logan, I'll start with you. What's it mean to come in and represent the Wineglass Ranch and just meet your fellow recipients of this regional award?
It means everything. We were able to have dinner last night and kind of catch up. This is the first time that we all got together. I found myself in very good company, despite people coming from all over the place, and really an honor for me and my parents who put in a lot of work and were really the original conservationists. And my wife and I have just really continued that, and it is just great to be recognized for that.
Mike, for yourself, what's this experience been like in being recognized on so many levels now, making your way up to the national level?
It's quite an honor because I've always been a backdoors guy, to be in the background doing stuff, and I'm not used to being out in the spotlight. So yeah, it's overwhelming. Yeah. It's quite an honor.
Yep. And Jack, for yourself?
Yeah, I'm just really tickled to be here, and I'm learning things from people who live in other parts of the country about their operations, and I think we got to always be learning, always learn something every day, and I think that's occurring here. So
now, Jack, you sat in on most of that other podcast
I did,
too,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you were so surprised when we played a trivia game during the middle of it,
good.
And they were not prepared.
Good.
I'm game.
Yeah, I'm up. Yeah, I love it.
But Jack, for yourself, let's just touch on the operation there in Iowa and what it consists of and what type of cattle you're running and just the background of it.
Yeah. Well, our farm is in eastern Iowa, about 20 miles from the Mississippi River. And my family came to one of our sites in 1853. So we've continuously farmed it. It's never been rented or anything, and I'm pretty proud of that we've been able to sustain that farm through depressions and wars and whatever. And we run about 425 cows. We have a small herd of Red Angus, or registered Red Angus cows. And then we do have a few Charolais purebred cows too as well. But we love crossing those two breeds. We really love our buckskin cows and our buckskin calves. Yeah. And we do feed our calves. So we're kind of the consummate farmer feeder in Iowa. Yeah, but we do not have to buy any feeder cattle, so we just feed what we raise. And we do row crop a fair amount, but we've also been able to change the landscape a bit in Iowa by growing forages and growing summer annuals like Sudan And we cover crop all of our acres because it's just a good economic choice to run cows on our row crop acres. So.
What's it been like having to compete over the last few years with row crop acres? And
well,
again, prices aren't great on that side
no,
of it right now
no.
either. But
Well,
what is that? What are the challenges that come
well,
with that?
like the really, really high quality land, it's just priced out of contention for a lot of people. I mean, you know, maybe you could do it with cattle prices now, but it'd be foolish probably to do it. So we tend to expand on buy farms that are poor quality and take them out of production and then set them up to rotational graze. That's kind of what we've done. Yep. Yeah. But really, what really has expanded our forage base is cover cropping, and then, our cows live on our row crop acres probably about 5 months out of the year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the actual cash crop is, an equal amount of time.
Yeah.
So we try to utilize it the year round, and we feel like that's a really good fit for the Midwest to maybe grow cow numbers if people have a knack for cows.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, for yourself, what's the operation consist of? What's it look like, and what's the climate like there in Kentucky?
With the climate, all kinds. If you don't like the weather now, wait 12 hours. It'll change, be something different. A lot of rain this year. It's been a terrible spring to get anything done. Most people just now getting their first hay cutting done when they should be starting their second hay cutting. Summers have been real hot and humid so far. Been a challenging spring for sure.
No, it doesn't matter where you're at. It's been it's different no matter where you're at. And I'm up in Montana, and heck, my in-laws 15, 20 minutes away. They got way more rain this year than I did. And it sure was a quick hay crop for me to put up here this year. I can tell you that. But, Mike, what kind of cattle are you running over there?
Mine's mostly a Simmental Angus cross. I've been working with the University of Kentucky for the last 12 or 13 years on genetic study. Mm-hmm. I started out with pretty large cattle, like 1,800 pound cows, weaning a 550, 600 pound calf off of it. Dr. Anderson's goal was to drop down to about a 1,300 or 1,400 pound cow and still wean the same size calf off of it, and we've managed to do that, which cut back on feed a lot and hay consumption. This year we're fixing to start introducing Gelbvieh into the herd to maybe have a three-way cross. I'm kind of excited about that. I've been doing a lot of research on Gelbvieh. I've worked with UK on a lot of other practices. In fact, Tommy Yankee, which is our county extension agent, he classifies my farm as a mini research farm where I've done so many practices with the UK on stuff. Yeah. And I try to be open-minded, and they know they can come to me, and if it makes sense, I'm willing to try it. So.
When did you start? You said 13 years ago about working with UK on getting that frame size down, but was that just something you've always been open-minded about, or did someone say, hey, don't be afraid to keep learning? What's that?
Well, that's when Dr. Anderson started his genetic study.
Yeah.
And then Tommy Yankee come to me and asked me if I'd be willing to use my herd for this genetic study, and I was the very first one to get on board with it. Yep. And then we done that for a year, and then after that, another guy in the county got on board, and then I think he got up to like 50 or 60 farms doing this genetic study. Yeah. So.
But from a young age, have you always just been like, hey, I'm an open book. Let's try something different.
Pretty much.
I'm not afraid to put my hand up.
Yeah. I hear it, and it makes sense to me. I'm willing to, give it a try. I grew up on a dairy farm, so I've been around farms all my life. Yep. And it's something that's just in your blood.
So what made you change direction from dairy to beef?
When I graduated high school, I went to work at the Ford garage in Frankfort, and kind of got away from the dairy business. And my dad ended up selling out after I left. Tried to get him to let me go in with him on it, but he wouldn't do it. So anyway, after I left the farm, it didn't last too long. He decided it's too much work for him and my younger brother. Yeah. So. And then, of course, me working full time, I didn't have time to help near as much. And dairies, it's either now you go big or go out.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're not milking 12 to 14 hours or around the clock, you can't make it.
Yep. Well, again, I'm looking forward to talking more about the work you're doing there with UK as well. I think that's interesting too, because obviously that trend of having big cows too, that's a lot of feed.
It is.
It's a lot of stress on natural resources. And Logan, for yourself there in Nebraska, let's talk about the landscape, what kind of cattle you're raising, and
Sure, so
what it's like out there.
Fairly similar to Jack, but we're on the far western fringe of the Corn Belt. So we farm and ranch. Our cattle spend a lot of time on farm ground, grazing residues, grazing cover crops as well. We'll grow full season cover crops. Semi-arid region for sure. We're west of the 100th by 100 miles. Average rainfall is about 19 inches annually. We can get as little as 9 and as much as about 26, 28. When we do get that 26, 28, we grow 170 bushel dryland corn, and the pastures look great, and it just really looks like the Garden of Eden. And when we get 9 inches, it looks like the opposite of the Garden of Eden.
I hear you. Yeah.
And so, when we look at this, obviously, I always like hearing about the different collaborations or education resources that folks use to be successful in the countryside. Logan, I'll start with you. Yeah, what are some of the groups you work with, whether it's agencies or like Mike working with the university system? What are some of those programs or people you work with or learn from to help be sustainable out in the countryside?
Peer-to-peer is my number one. I'm very active on Twitter. I love to visit with people. I've spent, my boots have been on more ranches than my competitors by 10x. I've probably visited 100 different farms and ranches in my life. The networks that I use is Ranch for Profit and Ranch Management Consultants. It's a great program. My dad originally went through it in the late 80s with Stan Parson and really helped our operation, and we're still involved with that. And Vicarious Readers, both my dad and I, financially minded, and Alan Nation, the former editor of the Stock and Grass Farmer, has about a dozen books, and I can't imagine ranching without having those dozen books. I probably reread a handful of them annually.
Yeah. And what are some of the improvements you made out on the operation just to get cattle out where they need to get if you only get that 9 inches and the Garden of Eden isn't there?
Yeah. So my dad came home from Ranch for Profit there in the 90s. I was a young kid, and we did a lot of cross fencing. Later came the water development. We thought we could accomplish a lot with a lot of cross fencing. We learned the hard way that you really have to have the water development, and where we're at, you need about a tank a quarter to get the even grazing distribution. And so we have 2 tanks, and every section is cut up into, so our average pasture is about a half section with 2 tanks on it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for a little bit of background there too, and Jack, for yourself, I'm interesting too because I'm up where we're at. It's dry, and you get one cutting of hay, and you go through and manage your pastures. But obviously, with that cropping system woven into it too, what have been some of the changes that you've implemented over the years in terms of? I know you have those cover crops, but what are the farming practices that you've maybe looked at and implemented over the years?
Yeah. Well, about 23 years ago, we went 100% no-till, and very much just because I couldn't stand erosion. I just have a low tolerance for soil erosion, and we never did do fall tillage, but we're making a real light field cultivator pass ahead of corn, and we just decided that we don't need to do that anymore. So we spent a lot of time and effort for planters set up so we could successfully no-till, and we really have our planter dialed in now to no-till and in really diverse conditions, whether it be no-tilling into alfalfa or corn on corn or corn following beans, that's obviously the most important pass is that planter pass. So, we'll literally kick cows off of our cornfields that are grazing rye and then just pull the planter right in, so those cows may spend, up to middle of May on row crop fields, and then it allows our permanent pastures to get a big head start. So in some ways, it's a really good way to drought-proof, our permanent pastures. So, yeah.
When you did no-till, were a lot of your neighbors looking at that yet, or were you one of the first?
No, we weren't. I have a neighbor who kind of mentored us, a couple neighbors actually. and we have a text group where we bounce ideas off each other. And that's really been helpful. You know, a lot of the ideas that we get at meetings I think are good ideas, but maybe they don't translate back to the farm as well as you'd like. And but if you have mentors who are doing things successfully, I think that's a really good approach. And my kids have really bought into this. You know, maybe they were ahead of me on it. You know, they just see that it's such a huge time saving. Like when we're calving, you know, my one son used to have to run a tillage thing ahead of me. Well, he just loves being able to spend time with his cows instead of having to do that. You know, so and obviously that's a way better enterprise than row cropping at the moment.
Were your forefathers open-minded at looking at agriculture differently? Yeah,
I mean they were good stewards first and foremost, and like I said, the farms that we're farming were handed off to us in good condition, you know. But we have improved them quite a bit, I think. But we were instilled with the idea that, you know, we're only here a little while, and we need to, you know, if you know, like in Iowa, we've been farming maybe for 150 to 175 years, which is just such an insignificant amount of time. And, you know, we've in some cases lost half our topsoil, which is unacceptable. Yeah. So, you know, I think we, you know, got to work really hard to change that, you know, because we obviously need to leave something for other people. Yeah.
Similar to Mike talking about, you know, getting that frame down a little bit on those cows. Have you changed the size of your cattle?
Yeah, our cows are probably 13 to 13 and a half. We like them big bodied, and we like to bring in genetics from the West and then bring them to our place where we have a lot of resources, and it seems like we really get a lot big outcomes out of that. And because we feed our calves and they're all calf fed, we like some size, you know, and it seems like pounds really do pay, especially in this market. Yeah.
Mike, coming back to you there too, what has been one of the biggest takeaways from working in being the first in that UK study too, in terms of what maybe you're supplementing in the winter as well? What are some of the strategies you're doing in being more cost effective in your grazing and what you're feeding in the winter if you need to feed, and then also looking at that frame size too and just the intake that cows take?
Luckily with my hay, most of my hay to test out somewhere around 12.5% crude protein and 50 or 60 TDN, so therefore I don't have to supplement. I haven't supplemented any kind of feed in the winter for years. I usually, 3 or 4 months, I usually have a creep gate up for the calves to come into a separate field, and I may start bucket feeding them a little bit, just get them used to a bucket, because I'd rather go out there and rattle a bucket and them come to me than me have to go to them and try to run them in. Yeah. So I kind of try to spoil them some. I'll occasionally may feed the cows just enough to where I can rattle the bucket, because I move them from pasture to pasture. Most of the time they're ready to move anyway. They'll just open the gate and they'll follow me. But if I try to bring them in to work them or something, I can rattle a bucket or something. Most of the time they'll just follow me into the pen. Yeah. Look, I have a lot of red and white clover in my hay fields, along with orchard grass, timothy, and fescue. Yeah. So and you usually get it cut at the right time, and you always test it out well enough that I don't have to do any supplementation. Yep.
And similar to what Jack was saying too, mentorship-wise, you know, separate from maybe the work you've done with the UK, who have been some mentors in your life that have helped you be successful, or made you look at things maybe a little differently, or maybe gave you a wake-up call? I don't know.
Well, I've known a lot of older farmers, and it's a bunch of them. I mean, golly, I could sit there and probably name off 10 or 15 names that people I've admired and liked the way they done things, and worked with them some just so I would know how to do it. And I've had several. My dad, my grandfather's probably my two biggest ones. Yep.
Logan, jumping back to you too, I've asked both Jack and Mike about, you know, cattle size and whatnot. We didn't cover about what kind of cattle you're running over there, and what's your optimum weight and frame for your cows over there?
Well, we run yearlings over, so we run a couple thousand yearlings in Wyoming. So carcass isn't not as important, so we stretch them. Our cows are about 1,150 to 1,200 pounds. Everyone says they have a 1,200-pound cow herd. We actually do. And my dad was really laser focused on genetics with our non-selective rotational grazing system. we learned that when he went to it, we didn't really have the right cow. And so in the 90s, he went on a mission to kind of create the cow that would survive in that non-selective grazing system. And so what it is, it's a Hereford Angus cross. It's about 1/3 Hereford, some Angus. In the last 5 or 6 years, worked with Burke Teichert, and we've added just a sliver of Fleckvey and Simmental to get that three-way cross. We had the Hereford Angus forever and added just enough Continental that you really can't spot it in them, and that's primarily what we run.
Yeah, and just flick it out there, right?
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
And we just did some
Sprinkle it out.
some genetic testing on our cow herd using the Neogen deal.
Yeah.
And it turned out so we did this 5 or 6 years ago. We bought some Fleckvey cross bulls and Simmental cross bulls, and it worked perfectly. It's like 2% and 2% Fleckvey and Simmental, which was kind of cool to see that it actually worked and stayed in the herd.
How did you take that genetic data then too? Obviously, it proved that you accomplished your goal, but have you used other aspects of that data that came back, or maybe some other tests to looking at replacement females and keeping those high performing females in the herd? What have you gone down that road a little bit?
You know, what we do with our replacement heifers, we're a bit unique. This is the Teichert method, is we expose every heifer every year, and we'll turn out the bull for as little as 14 days and as much as 45 to 60 days when we're trying to grow. So we don't try to visually identify them. We kind of let Mother Nature do it. And it's an all grazing program, no feed, no supplement, no hay. We're pretty rough on our heifers. And so we'll get a breed up of like 50, 60% occasionally, and that's completely acceptable.
You let them tell you.
Let them tell me. I called Burke when I first came back to the ranch. I said, I got a problem. My breed up's only 85% on my replacement heifers. And he said, oh, that's too high.
You're feeding them too much.
Yeah. He's like, oh, yeah, that's you need to cut that back. Wait, what?
Yeah.
Wait a
And
second.
we found doing that, we probably not as severely as you, but a phenotype does emerge, which is cool to watch.
Yeah.
They're longer fronted and thinner skinned and,
Yeah.
Look like cows, not masculine. Yeah.
You watch a lot of good heifers come up open. That you would say,
Yeah.
that's going to be a good cow.
Yeah.
And it didn't make it.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
You guys keep talking. I love this.
And the ones with the spots, and you got some different colorations.
Yeah.
They're always bred every
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
you never say that's my favorite heifer.
No, you cannot say that.
Yeah.
No.
That's just doomed.
Yeah.
That's just doomed.
Yeah.
He's going to be
And,
open.
and like in my environment, they might be a tick bigger than in yours
I
because
would
of our
completely
resources.
imagine,
Yeah. And we're good with that because our pay weights are higher when we feed them. Yeah. And we as calf feds, we like them to get big in a hurry if we can.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, and different geographical locations have different needs, I think. Yeah.
What have been the biggest challenges? We've all gone through drought here over the last few years in some form. Montana, we've had grasshoppers and drought, and just depending on where you're at in the state for going on 7 years, just depending on just what systems come through. And obviously, Logan and I are younger producers, but having spent a lot of time raising cattle and looking at your natural resources, how have you adapted to changes and just the unpredictability of weather over the years?
Last few years have been a challenge. I try to rotate them a little more often when the ground's wet, so they don't just tear up one field real bad. I usually try to maintain at least 100 row surplus each year in hay, which last year was a great thing I did because in August we was feeding hay just like it was wintertime.
Yeah.
I mean, August to the rest of the winter I fed hay like that because it just turned off so dry. Year before last wasn't quite as bad, but it was pretty bad. And as wet as this spring's been, I'm kind of afraid it's going to be the same way this year. I'm afraid it's going to cut off and not rain anymore. So it's definitely a challenge, and you got to change your management strategy up during those practices and times.
Are you doing any bale grazing over there?
I am. In fact, the first time Dr. Greg Halich come out and talked to us about bale grazing in Kentucky, I pretty much told him he was crazy. I said, because you just got to tear your fields all to pieces.
Yeah.
And I was closed-minded on that one. I didn't jump on that board real quick, but another couple guys there in Anderson County did. And I watched how they performed for a couple years, and I thought, it's better than I expected. So anyway, he come back to me, and I said, yeah, let's give it a try. So we did, and I guess this is the 5th or 6th year I've been doing it now. It's really improved my pastures a bunch. It's put more organic matter back into the pastures, especially around where the rows were. You can go out there and you can always tell where the row has set, but around it, as it starts feathering out, and you can tell the grass is this tall and green and starts fading out as it gets out. And then next year, you just set the bale in a different place. But it's really improved my pastures. I haven't spent a penny on organic fertilizer in I don't know how long on pastures, because it just really has made a big difference. And then if it gets real muddy and nasty, I've got 2 Bo Renfro feed pads that I can bring them in on concrete. And if it gets real muddy and nasty, then I bring them in on the concrete to feed them for a while. Then if the ground freezes up or thaws. Kentucky, you hardly ever get a long stretch of frozen ground. So I usually just try to catch it froze. Then I usually set out enough rows at a time to where I can feed for 3 or 4 weeks. And during that 3 or 4 week period, I'll catch a time that it's dried up or frozen, and I'll set enough hay out for 3 or 4 more weeks. Some guys go out and set out a whole winter at one time. I like to try to keep my hay under the roof as much as possible, as long as I can. And then therefore, when you catch it weather like that, you're not out there with your tractor compacting the soil, leaving ruts 7 or 8 inches deep, tearing your fields all up.
Yep. And in between those 3 weeks, you go to Mexico and kick your feet up, right? The cows take care of themselves.
Sure, why not?
No, we move them. We usually feed enough rows at a time. In a couple, 2 or 3 days, they've cleaned it up. And then we use poly wire to go across the field. And then we just we put 2 strands of poly wire up in case they break through the first one. They're not tearing the other set of roll of hay up. So we just kind of leapfrog that poly wire across the field to where it's getting an even amount of distribution of from the cows and stuff.
Yep.
I've also learned that poly wire is just a suggestion. You need to have a little reinforcement.
In case they get through the first, not tearing all the hay up, they just get a few rolls.
We've all discussed, looking at things differently and trying things out and continuing to learn. And we all see it, whether it's on social media, at a local cattle producers meeting, state, national event, is how do we get that next generation going? How do we keep these operations going too? And sometimes it just seems the people asking that sometimes aren't willing to make a few changes or do things a little bit different. And I'm not critical of that either, because we all have circumstances that impact our daily lives. And those of us that work off the ranch to supplement the ranch and whatever that might be. But I guess what are those barriers that people maybe need to try to get over or tear down in looking at raising cattle differently and taking care of their natural resources differently? And not to talk down at them either, we know that, but what are some encouraging words you have for producers about if we're going to be profitable and stay in business and run cattle on the same operation, maybe not have to buy more land to run more cattle? What encouraging words do you have for them? Jack, I'll let you chime in there.
Well, like my own sons, to be an example for them, but our finances are kind of all interrelated, really, and my oldest son is a CPA. So we don't worry about a few $1,000s one way or the other. If you're concerned about that, you're probably doomed to fail as a family. So we try to look at what's beneficial financially to every family in our operation. We don't get concerned about it. As long as everybody has enough, we're happy. And then I think the other thing, if you want that kid to come back, you have to make agriculture kind of enjoyable in some ways. Get off the farm once in a while and see what's going on. Like you said, visit other places and learn from other people. I think that's so important, and bring back what you can to your place. And then thirdly, maybe if people see what you're like we have cows on cornfields that are being held back by a hot wire, on busy roads, and people think, well, they're crazy, But we know how to do it, So you can be an example to other people.
Yeah.
We have so many resources in Iowa, and a lot of grain farmers, if they could pull a chisel behind their combine, they would, and bury, and you wouldn't think of doing that where you live, would you? You would use that feed. Yeah. So it's crazy to me.
Yeah.
We would never consider burying any residue because we can utilize it, and then make it, by removing residue, we set that field up to no-till the following year. So. Yeah.
I'm really frustrated. My ancestors didn't stop in Iowa.
Yeah,
but it was full.
I'm thankful. Yeah, when
They tried.
I admire you guys, fighting drought. That's got to be hard, and we rarely worry about that.
Logan, what's your perspective on that too? Whether helping people push past that resistance of we've done it this long, we're doing a good job. That we don't need help or assistance from like a government agency because we've been here long enough. What's some encouraging words you have to producers our age about it's okay to maybe apply for an EQIP grant?
Sure. Yeah. Well, we take advantage of all those. We're very financially minded. My wife, Dad, and I, we manage the finances personally, and that's the one thing that we do very well. Economics is so important, and in the 80s, it kind of felt like you could work your way through it, and that got busted. And I think we're kind of post that in the agriculture world of hard work is going to get us through because that's just no longer the case. And the second kind of piece to that, what really helps my thinking is being a grass farmer. So I'm not necessarily a rancher. I'm really a grass farmer, and our rotational grazing system is set up so that over 95% of our ranch is not being grazed currently. So it is raining, and we are actively growing grass on that. And going from the rancher mindset to the grass farmer mindset is going to do wonders, for your ranch, for the environment, for the wildlife, and in the end, your cattle, really, because that's really what you need to sustain your cows.
Mike, what's some encouraging words you have for producers? I mean, the work you're doing with the UK, it's just great there's resources out there and people willing to help producers change things up, make things work a little better. And, you even said yourself you're a little resistant to the bale grazing idea too. But why do folks need to have an open mind in agriculture?
You're not going to learn anything if you don't have an open mind. I mean, it just pays to listen and it don't hurt to listen and then study on it, make your own mind up, and do a little research on it before you jump the boat and do something. But there's a lot of opportunities out there. Here in Kentucky, I think there's pretty much a cattlemen's club in almost every county, I guess. Mm-hmm. And then there's several universities around that participates in farming and agriculture. So we have a lot of access to knowledge and resources and stuff. It's already been tried and done, and I have a lot of people contacting me on bale grazing and some of the AI stuff we've done. I've even had one time a tour bus come in from Bardstown, which is probably about 60 miles, to look at my operation on how I was doing things and stuff, and some of the work I've done with other universities.
What's that like having a bus pull into your yard? What was your initial reaction?
It was different. And the road I live on is a pig path, so I mean, it's like a mile and a half, and you barely have room to pass anybody. So a big tour bus coming down that road was something to see.
That's one thing too. We're all three of your operations are being recognized for the excellence out there, and that didn't happen overnight, and it didn't happen, just by snap of your finger either. Mm-hmm. And what was your initial reaction when you received the news that you were a regional winner in this category? Mike, what was your reaction?
Unbelievable. I mean, I think there's 8 or 12 states that's in this region, and for me to win out of that many states, I know last year I won the Kentucky Leopold Award, mm-hmm. and I was just blown away that I even won it. And then this year to win this, it's kind of like I'm gonna wake up and this is all gonna be a dream. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a heck of a I don't know the word I'm looking for, an honor.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Jack, for yourself, what was that like?
Yeah, I'm like Mike. I'm really honored to be recognized, and I don't think any of us set out for that, and maybe to have people notice what you're doing and think, well, maybe this would work for the larger public, and And I think it's important to open your farm up to the public. You know, we have a lot of school kids come to our farm, and like many of them have never been on a farm, and I really enjoy that. You know, we take them on a tour and kind of try to explain that, you know, our goal here is to be profitable first, and then be environmentally responsible second. But you know, one isn't exclusive of the other. I think the more responsible you are to the environment, the more profitable you'll be, and you know, sustainability is kind of the buzzword, and I think we truly are. You know, the things we're doing would work probably anywhere in the country, really. So, yeah.
Logan, what was your and your family's reaction?
Really honored, and for those that don't know, you don't actually apply for this award, you get nominated, and Nebraska Cattlemen nominated our family, and when I read the application, I was like, I am honored that people believe this about, you know, that we're doing the good thing. Like, when I read the application, I was like, wow, that was very cool. So thank you, Libby and Laura. Appreciate the effort.
Yeah, I asked the other regional winners in the last podcast, and Jack was sitting in here when I asked it, and I don't know if it's a bad question or a wrong question, but you know, as we sit here, you know, we it's all about being sustainable financially and on our natural resources. And the question I asked the other three regional winners is, how do you instill the values of the land and the cattle in the 1 or 2 generations that haven't been born yet? Because we know the price of land, especially in your country.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
selling one section off, everyone could retire and go kick up in Mexico.
Yeah.
But how do you start today to instill that the value of raising food, taking care of your land, and raising your family in the countryside? How do we instill that today with that generation that still isn't here?
Yeah. Well, I think today it's, you know, more appealing than ever to live in the country, you know, and you know, be in a community where everybody kind of has your back, you know. So I think in return, you have to be, you know, a positive community member, you know. And so for us, you know, like you look at these land values, and they really are a detriment to young people getting involved in agriculture. So I think maybe we ought to take a look at public policy, and you know, what's driving these land values in Iowa is federal subsidies to big grain farms, and I really have a problem with that. You know, I think we'd be way better off to return cows to Iowa and keep families on farms and supporting schools and churches and veterinarians and feed people, you know. So I think, you know, if you step back and look, I think that's something we really need to look hard at, you know.
And your point about a vibrant rural community is vital too.
It is, yeah. Yeah, we, you know, my little community, we have a lot of kids. You know, it's just really gratifying to see that. You know, families that are maybe a little bigger than they were, you know, 15 years ago. You know, families with 5 or 6 kids. You know, so I really love to see that. Yeah.
Mike, what's your take on that and that generation that's still a twinkle in somebody's eye, but about truly the importance of these operations?
That's close to my heart, because I want to see younger people get more involved in agriculture, and I try to encourage as much as I can. But there again, you know, land prices, equipment prices, and just getting started out, I just don't see how a young person can hardly, unless they inherit a lot of money or inherited a farm or something like that, which it's just really tough for a young kid to get started nowadays. Even if we're not going to farm, you know, to try to buy a house and raise a family. It's really tough on young children. Something needs to be turned around, and I'm not smart enough to know how to fix it. But and then farms in around our area is very disheartening to me. Is you'll have a 200-acre farm come up, and bam, first thing they do, they want to split it up in 25-acre tracts, and that just breaks my heart. There goes a perfectly good farm that's got to be subdivided off.
Yep.
And if they don't buy it around our area, the distilleries are going to buy it and put up a bunch of rick houses on it.
Yep.
We're having a big problem with that in my area.
Yep. Logan, the twinkle in the eye question too for that generation that has still yet to come, and you know, what's your take on that?
I would just encourage them to adopt the long-term mindset. It's short-term thinking with cropping and systems can lead to degrading soil health. But when you're thinking about, I am the the steward of this generation, and I'm going to pass it off a little bit better. When you're thinking about soil health in Nebraska, we don't have Iowa top soils. We've got a few inches, and my goal is to add a few inches more, and it is truly more profitable in the long term to adopt that mindset and long-term thinking.
And you know how to do it.
Yeah, we do.
You know how to do it.
We absolutely do.
Yep.
Well, gentlemen, I just want to thank you all. It's kind of been fast and furious. I know you did some media training yesterday, and I know you're ready to give your speeches this afternoon and accepting the awards on stage.
5-minute minimums, right?
Yes, yeah. But congratulations. Tip of the hat to you all. Thank you for sharing your stories, and I look forward to seeing the videos that come out that Baxter Communications. I know have they all been out to your operations yet, Brian?
Yeah,
and the crew?
we all saw a bit of a preview last night.
Okay, great. So I'm looking forward to that, and for our listeners too. It's truly seeing the successes and everything that you do in the countryside. That's what makes the ESAP program what it is. And again, we're so proud and thankful for the support from the Natural Resource Conservation Service, Corteva Agriscience, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for being those top-tier sponsors day in and day out for the ESAP awards. But it's all about the people, and it's all about the land and the cattle, and it's all about learning.
I like to say that, within our CS and state cost share in our area, for the young person getting started out, there's a lot of money out there to help them. I know they helped me a lot. They've helped me get city water in every one of my pastures where I can do a better rotational job. They helped me put the 2 concrete feed pads in. And in Kentucky, we have a thing called CAPE, which is a tobacco settlement. Yep. And so in our county, if you spend $10,000, you can get $5,000 of that back, whether it be on equipment or something for your cattle, fencing, pasture renovation, and so there's a lot of support and stuff out there for a young person getting started out. So I encourage them to take advantage of all those programs.
Nope, definitely. It takes time too, going in there.
Don't happen overnight.
Yep. Well, thank you for adding that in there too. I think that was important. And again, good luck over the next few months. Sure. The award will be given out at the 2026 CattleCon there in February, there in Nashville. But and I look forward to you guys getting to know each other a little more too. And again, I enjoyed the dialogue. I could have just sat here and listened to you guys talk more about things. That probably would have been a better show than me on here. But again, congratulations and compliments to everyone for all your work and sharing just a preview of your family operations.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah,
with that, friends, thanks for joining us. Again, NRCS Corteva and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, thank you for your support. And thanks for our audience joining us here today on the podcast. Make sure and click subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Again, check us out on YouTube and YouTube Music as well. With that, we'll wrap up for today. I'm Lane Northland. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to NCBA's Cattleman's Call podcast with Lane Nordland. For more information, visit ncba.org and make sure to subscribe to the podcast today.